I'm here with Lachlan Giles discussing key topics surrounding our long-term journey in Jiu-Jitsu. So far, we've been focusing on the interplay between Jiu-Jitsu as a sport and as a martial art, as well as touching on our ultimate career goals. The aim of this series is to take Lockie's experience in Jiu-Jitsu and compare and contrast it with what is happening in other sports so we can find new ways to train and improve and develop over time. In this episode, we're going to discuss long-term progression through the belts and also look at how goal setting can be used to improve more quickly. We go back to this book, Jiu-Jitsu University, that I read from Salo Rabira a while ago. And in this book, he basically outlines his view of what you should be aiming to do at each belt. So, for example, at white belt, he says the aim is survival. At blue belt, the aim is to experiment with different types of guards and find what works for you. Then at purple, you want to start to refine your technique and maybe you're going to mentor other people. At brown belt, it's about polishing the edges. And at black belt, you should be like a veteran that's seen most of the different things and you can help other students with it. How do you think your focus should change as you progress through the belts? Do you think there's a general standard way in which people should progress, or do you think it's different for each individual person?
Yeah, my thoughts are a bit different to that. Some people would say you have to learn a technique perfectly at first, like you got to get all the details right and and you'd see someone like, spending a long time when they first start on getting like an armbar from guard right, for example. My thoughts are you actually learn better by doing like a small, it might be 3 steps to the move, and then as you get further and further through your jiu-jitsu, those 3 steps become 6 and 9. Like you kind of like fill in the gaps in between, because then it's kind of like, I feel like you want to kind of build a framework pretty early, like right from the start. You'd want to get like a broad understanding. What are the main positions in jiu-jitsu? So offensively and defensively, and like, can I get like one attack from each of those things? So you kind of build this like, say like a circle, like a concentric circle of information there. And then you want to kind of expand another layer on top of that, which then has more detail. And then another layer again like that, which, so maybe, I don't know how many layers you end up with actually officially, but I feel like expanding out like that more so than, and kind of that way you've got like, you can identify weaknesses more, I think, when you got that. When you've got a full game and you're like, oh, actually, like, when I get here, I know what I'm trying to do, but it's not working. I can try to fix that. Whereas if you just work, if you said to someone like, okay, let's build it like right from the start, I'd probably say, let's start with escapes. But you'd probably spend like 2 to 3 years on escapes before you even learn how to attack from guard. Like if you wanted to get perfect at it first, like that would be such a long process to like master something like that, and then you'd spend another 2-3 years on guard, and then like it ends up being 10 years before you can even submit someone from like past their guard and get on top. Whereas I think just like learning that kind of the broad game and filling in the gaps is a much better, and I think you'd learn faster and it's probably more enjoyable like that too. I also see a difference in the way I think you should learn when you or approach jiu-jitsu when you first start. Like I think at first you almost want to do a linear, like as a complete beginner, it should be like you're trying to do a linear move. Like okay, obviously there's concepts and there's techniques, and the concepts are really important because they can kind of sometimes give you a solution that apply to a broad range of topics. So I think the conceptual side is good, but there's always exceptions. I've never seen a jiu-jitsu concept or strategical idea that's never had an exception to it. So that's not going to make you a master. It's going to make you good, but not necessarily a master. I mean, I'm using that term, but whatever you want to call it, but like, very good at jiu-jitsu. So I think you almost, like from a technical point of view, you almost want to see it as a linear thing. Like I'm going to get to close guard, get the elbow to here with a foot on the hip, like, and it's like a linear process to getting an armbar from close guard. And then I kind of feel like as you progress further, when you go to the next layer of that, you might then have action reaction. So like, I'm going to go for my armbar and then they're going to drive into me, because that's a frustrating thing. When I go for my armbar, they drive in. So I'm going to sweep them the other way, and you've now got like a 1-2 combination you can kind of throw at your opponent. And then after that, I think like expanding on that, you start getting systems where like you actually kind of keeping your, like, somewhat simple systems and then more advanced systems, but kind of keeping the game, like you've got reactions and action reactions throughout all these little things that constantly funnel the game into a certain area or position where you've got a bunch of different options you can go through depending on your opponent's reaction. So that's kind of how I view progress best. And then I don't think you necessarily want to keep going with that broad thing forever. I think there's like a certain amount of, like, I talked about that broad skill set. At a certain point, when I feel like you've got like a decent game, like a broad game that's actually, you feel comfortable escaping from positions. You might not be amazing at it, but you can escape. You can get to the guards you want. You can get on top, like with a basic strategy, and you can pass. And that might not be against everyone, but a bit. Then I think you want to start specializing to a degree in a certain guard. Like you're not going to be effective learning every guard at the same time. You're not going to, if you spend like one day learning De La Riva, one day learning butterfly, one day learning, we can probably list like 15 different guards, but if you spent a different day doing that and trying to get good at them all at once, I think it's just too much and it's confusing. And you see that in top level competitors that usually got like one area they're good at or really good at. And I think you almost want to start trying to do that early. And then once you feel confident in that, you can start adding another one that's kind of adjacent to that. Because, if you've learned butterfly guard really well, then you can learn single X and X. That's going to be kind of pretty easy for you to see how that can add to your current game. And you kind of build out from there. But you still want your core game. You got your game that you're excellent at, or at least trying to be. And you'll continue to develop that even further while you might add some little extra parts of your game. And eventually you do, I think, at least for me, like I would say I have a broad amount of games I can play, but I've still got my best, like I've got my games I'm going to try to, that my area I'm going to try to get the fight to as much as I can. But I also still feel comfortable, to a pretty high level at a bunch of other guards and passing. I think you've got to do the same thing. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but that's how I would approach if I could build someone's game from scratch. And the only other thing I haven't said is people's attributes would probably dictate what I would get them to actually focus on at first, or potentially not just at first, but long-term as well. If someone's tall or short, are they flexible or not? Are they strong? Are they slow or fast? I think all those sort of things are going to influence how well they're going to perform with a particular type of game. And ideally, we kind of direct people to what's going to suit them, their attributes best.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about a game in the next little section. But before we get to that, I don't know if you've read Josh Waitzkin's book, The Art of Learning. If you don't know, he's a black belt under Marcelo Garcia. He was also a child chess prodigy, and in that, it's quite an interesting book in that he talks about in chess how his style of learning, or the way that he approached it and his teachers helped him to approach it, was that he learned first by studying the very basics of chess, like maybe a pawn and a king versus another king. So he started at the end with a constrained amount of things, and then over time he added the beginning of the game, right, the openings. And he said that he felt in learning that he learned the fundamental concepts behind the positions and was there able to be very strong in the long run. Whereas some people learned these opening tricks, they learned an opening set of moves, and when people weren't very skilled, they beat them. But as they got further into their training, they didn't really have a fundamental understanding of chess, and therefore they would get beaten by people with more experience or higher level who understood those factors. So the reason I give that as a starting point is because I wonder, is there things that you can do to help you win early on in the early belts, but you think can, in the long term, hinder your progress as you go through and move up to black belt?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, I would say, for example, even just wanting to go on top, like you often, like, it's almost counterintuitive, but also just by nature, like you don't start with a good guard. Like your guard game when you first start jiu-jitsu is usually not good. So a lot of time people will want to go on top and they don't want to actually spend the time to develop playing a good guard. And especially if you're in a lighter weight category, that's going to be very, very hard to win in a higher level tournament if you haven't developed a very, very effective guard. I also think I see people kind of doing the opposite. I see some people who get too comfortable in their guard and they don't work on top too. Some guards might work really well in the lower belts or attacks. Everyone learns the Americana,
for example, like as one of their first submissions, and I think it's a good one to learn. I'm going to contradict it here, but like generally, like you don't see a lot of Americanas in elite black belt level competition, but you might see a lot in white belt competition.
But that said, I did actually Americana someone at the IBJJF Worlds a few years ago. So, but that's probably the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. So do you think like learning an obscure move, for example, like an obscure thing, like early on, it can give you some real success, but then as you go up, it doesn't work anymore? Like, do you think that can be a trap to get into as well?
Yeah, there's that—there's definitely that too. Like, the classic one who may even listen to this is I won't say their name. We've got a guy that at our gym that would go into tournaments and he would often submit people from underneath side control, and I would he had this kind of funny choke that he would catch people out with, and no one would expect it. And I would tell him to stop doing it, but he would still keep trying it. And I think actually just generally, like, you can get like once you catch someone out, and sometimes those tricky ones like that side control choke, for example, like that might be the thing you could catch a higher belt with. Like you can maybe tap me out if you're a blue belt, for example, or a purple belt. Maybe you're more likely to tap me out with something weird like that than you are by passing my guard, taking my back, and choking me from the back. Like just now, even though we know that passing my guard and taking the back is absolutely the best way to beat me reliably, at that level, at purple belt, you might not have or blue belt, you might not have the skill set for that to be somewhat of a repeatable thing, because what that requires, what it requires to pass my guard, take my back, and choke me is for you to win battle after battle after battle after battle against it. Like, you have to win the first battle for grips, the second battle to like pass my feet line, my knee line, my hip line, you got to free your knee, free your foot, get to the mount. You got to, when I turn my back, you've got to, win the battle to get like an underhook, to get a seat belt, to get your first hook, second hook, then to isolate one or two of my arms, get your arm around the neck. Like there's countless battles that have to be won along the way, which someone who's going to beat me at a black belt level, like, if I'm fighting Lucas Lepri, he will beat me, or at least he did. He beat me at all of those levels, and that is the best way to beat me and the most reliable way to beat me, because he'd be able to do it again and again and again. But, well, I hope not, but we can at least say that's a very, very real possibility, or probability maybe. Whereas the side control choke thing, I maybe make one mistake, so you get this false confidence that that's the way to beat me. But the thing is, after I've seen it, it's not going to happen again. Like now that I know it exists, you're not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to get on me again, but you might do it to 3 other people that day who didn't expect. Or roll a couple. I've tapped 3 black belts with this. So then you get this sense that that's the way to beat people good, and you stop actually focusing on the thing that you need to do, which is becoming what Lucas Lepri has done. Which is be good at every battle. The main battles, the ones that occur the most common, be better than your opponent at that. And that's the hard thing. It's the hard road, but it's also the most important one to take.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you see that, like, one that I come up with, I think about is wrist locks. Once you've been caught with a couple of wrist locks, quickly you can learn not to deal with them. But there are people that try and focus on them purely, and maybe that's not an effective strategy. But then, wasn't it Wagner won one of his competitions recently with a wrist lock, didn't he, from standing position? You'd never seen that. I'd never seen that before, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely. I mean, that's the thing. You can. It's a hard one actually as well, because you can specialize, and that can be your advantage too. Like, I do think my leg lock game that I did against in the open weight at ADCC, like, I think my opponents were not really aware of the angles I was looking for and the exact entries and mechanics I was using to finish against them. Because I think if I tried to take them head on for that grip versus grip battle sort of thing in a world that they were very familiar with, I probably would have lost that match, whether it's due to skill or potentially the size difference as well. But having an avenue where I was playing a game that they weren't necessarily aware of, can work to your favor. And there is a component of that as well in jiu-jitsu, which I think it's almost like a technique arms race, where who has the newest technology to bring to the match that people, especially if people don't know about it or don't know that you're looking for a particular grip in a sequence. Now that can be a huge advantage, but it's different to the. Still with that, I still think you need mostly, you need like 80 to 90% of what you do to be like, what I was saying with Lucas Lepre, and then you might have like a little your own version of something. But I think it can't stray too far from. You don't want it to stray too far from the fundamentals. Like it still has to. Like for example, my leg locks, like they were based, like my inches were coming from De La Riva, which is already a very well established guard. I was just kind of applying something. I was going on a different angle, and I was looking for 50-50, which is already a very common position, and people were already using leg locks from there, but I just kind of took that focus a bit further. So I didn't go, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to pull under side control and try to work like a fist in the throat choke or something, making something up. But I think I would almost tell people not to almost actively try not to try to innovate things, like just work on the stuff we know works. And if something from that happens to evolve, that's a bit different, but you're finding it's being very effective, then that's good. But trying to like look up the latest YouTube technique that looks funny, then I'd say, watching high level competition and drawing your inspiration for techniques from that is going to be the best way to approach it. In jiu-jitsu, we have belts. In other sports, do we have ways of like assessing people's progress and long-term progress and approaching it?
Actually, something you just brought up a minute ago is kind of interesting in other sports. So in most sports, there's a big argument around this idea of early specialization, where you're really focused from a young age on a systematic approach to training. Okay, things like chess, for example, would be a good example where this works. Fencing, actually, we've got a head fencing coach at Aspire's excellent head coaching coach. He has started. He has coached the last 2 Olympic champions in the foil to gold medals, and he's here now. And he's like, I want to start with kids when they're like 7, 8 years old. Whereas myself in track and field, it's more interested in athletes when they're maybe 16 or so, like this. So there's this one idea of early specialization versus another idea, which is late specialization, whereas people start with a broad base of different things. And then over time, they start with variety. Over time, they become more focused. And this could be the idea of doing gi, no-gi, wrestling, whatever else, the MMA. And then eventually over time, choosing the area where you think you're, whether it's ADCC rules or EBI rules, where you think your skill set really works the best. And the second argument that's interesting is the idea between whether or not you should have systematic development, as in lots of drilling, lots of focused training, versus free experimentation. So really good example would be soccer, okay, football. In soccer, you've got like, let's say, German style of training. Let's just make it up. German style of training, where it's all systematized or very specific. And then you've got the Brazilians, where they start off playing futsal with a small ball. They play in the street. They have a more creative style. And at the top level, you want to be systematic. You want to be able to pass the ball exactly where it needs to go. But you also need to have something a little bit special about you, having that secret weapon, that thing that can change the game. And I think that's what you're kind of describing there is, you need to be both systematized and systematic, but you also need to have something that's a little bit different. And certainly those arguments are big arguments that people have all the time in other sports. The second thing about most other sports is that, especially the established ones, the ones that are in the Olympics, the ones where there's funding from government for, they create what's called an athlete or player development model. And basically, these are broad guidelines on how an athlete should develop from when they enter the sport through to, let's say, elite level success. And the main focus of this is normally around competition, because, let's say you're funding someone to win the Olympics. You have an idea of when they want them to start, like bringing them into, let's say, national training days or into some national club system or something, and develop them to a higher level, what you want them to have done before they got to there, etc. So they often create these player athlete development models to try and assist that, because especially the coaches that you first come into, they might not necessarily have an idea of what it takes to win at the high level. So they want to make sure that they're aware of the key factors and what they should be working on, how much time they should be spending on different things, so that when they come into that elite level performance, they're able to excel and they don't have to teach them all those skills again. And some of these player development models can become quite intricate and quite interesting. Probably the most strange thing that I heard, or actually quite scary to some extent, was, let's say, aerial ski jumping. So this is where you jump off the ski jump and you do like all these twists in the air and then you land. And in their player development model that they actually have an 18-month gap in there for when you inevitably have to go through ACL reconstructive surgery. What are they going to do during that period of time? Because your average elite level skier that wins a gold medal has had at least one ACL reconstruction in the time that they're in their sport. So these things, like, they get quite detailed, and people have really thought about this stuff. And that's, have we thought about that in jiu-jitsu? Is it something we can innovate in? For me, that's a key question, and something that if you've got a school or you've got an affiliate program or something, this is something maybe that you should look at building across your academies.
So you're I suppose you're talking from not even necessarily from a technical point of view, or like it's kind of beyond the technical. It's also like would be results based as well, and those sort of things. Or
yeah, I mean, literally these things often they include like from how many times a week you should train versus what you should be working on. So you haven't just let's just take every sport. You have your technical, tactical, but within the model that I work in, you have 4 other areas you want to work on as well. And that is physical preparation. So this is strength training plus a load of other things. Psychobehavioral, which is your sports psychology. So that includes things like goal setting, performance behaviors, how to behave to give yourself the best chance of winning. And also the one that we talked about earlier, which was managing arousal. Then you have lifestyle, which is sleep, nutrition, travel, how to deal with all these different things. And the final one is the more generic stuff, which is like what we call fundamental movement skills. So let's say you want to get good at S&C. Well, you probably need to learn how to lunge, squat, do different types of, in jiu-jitsu would be the different types of crawling activities and stuff that we do that are fundamentals of our sport. So you'd have these 5 areas, and it'd also talk about when to introduce these different things, what to focus on, etc., and when to start doing them. Because otherwise you get a kid, let's say, all they've done is like run, and then they come to an elite level training center, and now they've got expected to do all those things. They have no background in it. They're 2 or 3 years behind other people who had more of a broadly developed program.
Very interesting. Well, that'd be a lot of work, but it's definitely a good idea.
So we've talked a little bit about how you can progress your training as you move through the belts and these kind of things. And I've talked a lot about how goal setting is really important. So now I want to ask you a little bit about setting goals over the long term. Can you just start off by telling me a little bit about what your current training goals are at the moment? Like, what is it you're fundamentally working on at the moment, or maybe before the lockdown started?
I mean, since ADCC for me, it's been predominantly, well, I mean, my goal is, after ADCC 2019, my goal went to ADCC 2021, assuming that this whole Corona thing is gone by then, which I really hope so. Otherwise we're in big trouble if it's still around. I'll be fat. My goal will be to lose weight, I think, if that's the case. But my goal, so I suppose, like, for me, like, identifying weaknesses, and both of my matches at ADCC were essentially lost by a guard pass. So Lucas Lepre took my back, but that was through a guard pass, and Gordon Ryan also ended up taking my back, which was through a guard pass. So I actually thought my guard retention was up to scratch prior to that, just from kind of how I'd been rolling and competing prior to that. But ADCC kind of showed that as a bit of a weakness. So it was an area I hadn't worked on as much as I think I should have. So that's now I've gone back to the drawing board. I've been working with one of our guys at the gym, Ari, a very good black belt, who's kind of he's got a very flexible game. But his guard retention is so good, like really, really good. And I've tried to kind of take on his style of guard retention. And I've been doing a lot of stretching as well, trying to get more mobility to be able to utilize that style that he's playing. And I'm finding it's, at least from what I can tell so far working it, it's made a big difference. So hopefully some of the mistakes I made in ADCC will not recur. And then obviously, my plan was I kind of took a little break from wrestling just because it's hard on the body, and I did so much of it in the lead up to ADCC. I just wanted a little rest from that really intense wrestling, but I was planning on getting back to that, but this coronavirus might have messed up with that a bit, but I want to get back into wrestling. I mean, I still think any close match in ADCC is going to come down to a wrestling match, and I want to be hopefully the favorite if it gets to that side of the match by ADCC. And obviously the leg lock game I've been working. I'm still working on that. It's, probably the guard retention is probably the thing that's helping with that the most, in that my entries into the positions are getting better as I get better at guard retention. I'm sort of turning the defense into offense much better. So I think that'll actually help my finishing side of it as well. At least that's what I've experienced so far. So I haven't competed since ADCC, so I haven't been able to kind of showcase these things. But I feel like I've made some jumps, and actually wanted to take a little break from comps to focus on some things to improve. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like I didn't want to have a big fight coming up and focus on that instead of what I actually needed to do for the longer term, which was ADCC. But I think in the lead up to ADCC, then doing a few tournaments or super fights or whatever will be great, kind of to just shake some of the competition jitters and just iron out some of the things that are or are not working.
So you're using, your experience from when you competed against the highest level people to inform what you're going to work on. Let's say you're more of a recreational person who doesn't tend to compete. How would you help them to choose their goals, or how could they help to choose their goals themselves?
I would just, I think the best thing you can do is just like choose someone at the club that beats you and aim to beat them. not too far ahead. Okay. So like, or you can make it like more, so that's one way, or like it which would mimic the way I'm talking about there. Another one could be to whether you get a new instructional video, or whether you get watch it, you're studying a competitor, like try to emulate. I'm seeing this new single leg X sweep, then how can I'm going to try that in class for the next month, and I'm going to try and emulate Marcelo Garcia's game as much as I can for the next month or 6 months, or however long you feel like you want to spend on it. So I think going like that. But another good one is just I think picking, if you don't compete, but picking like, so, if you're a blue belt and a more advanced blue belt that always beats you, like I think you learn a lot by real problems. Like problem based learning I think is really important. So having someone, like if you're trying, this person always does this to me. Okay. So then you start paying attention and you go home and you think about, okay, so last time they cross-faced me when I went for that grip, so I'm going to be ready for the cross-face and I'm going to block it. And you kind of progress that way, and until you're actually like shutting down a good part of that person's game. And that's kind of like from almost a reactive defensive point of view, but you could also think of that from your offensive point of view. Like I'm trying to go to single X, but this guy always gets the underhook on me when I try to go to shin. So I'm going to go back and watch Marcelo Garcia and see how he deals with someone going for the underhook. I'm going to block and kind of, it's a bit of extra, I'm asking people to do a bit of extra work here, but I think it's important. Like, they have to do their homework. It's not something that they're, I think improvement in jiu-jitsu has to be a pretty active process. It's harder, but possible to kind of just show up to the gym and do what everyone else is doing and progress. If you want to progress faster, you need to do your own homework, or at least have someone doing that for you, which I think 99.9% of the population don't have that.
Yeah, for sure. And, like you're talking there a lot about goal setting, which we've already discussed as being super important. When is it, did you always do this? Have you always done this since the beginning when you started training jiu-jitsu, or when did goal setting and thinking about it like this start to change for you?
Like I didn't write down my goals, if that makes sense. But I always had I think I always had the view that, in jiu-jitsu you improve by working on techniques or skill sets and concepts and trying to like add them to your game. And like by gaining more skills, I kind of had the idea, the mindset that by gaining more skills, that's how you improve. And I always think I had a pretty long-term outlook. Like I always go, okay, what's going to make me better in 2 years? Even if I hadn't actually written that down, or I didn't like say, I'm going to win this tournament in 2 years. I think I always had that kind of mindset, that kind of longer term outlook, as opposed to a very short term, which would be, how do I beat the person in front of me, which is good. But I think putting a time limit on it makes you actually go, okay, well, like it's kind of like that process we talked about, but it was just less, probably less well thought out. But going like, okay, I want to get, I want to be able to beat this person. What are the list of what would I have to do to be able to achieve that? I probably kind of go through that in my own head, but take a long-term sort of view of that. I think if anyone's looking for anything in short-term in jiu-jitsu, it's kind of unrealistic. You'll make short-term. You will make short-term gains, but to go from losing someone to losing against someone to beating them in a very short time is probably unrealistic. But if you give yourself a year or 2 years, depending who you're picking, it's going to be much better. Actually, remember this got me a lot better, even though it never really eventuated. But I used to train with as a brown belt. Kit Dale and I used to train together a lot, and he was he was like a very fast learner. And I remember I would train with him, and I'd be trying a new thing. I'd be watching Rafael Mendes do his berimbolo, and I'd come in and I'd try and berimbolo Kit, and Kit would do some sort of defense, and I'd go home, spend 2 or 3 hours watching Rafael Mendes, trying to find an example of someone using that defense against him, so I could see how Mendes deals with it. Then I would come in and try and do it myself, but Kit would always stay one step ahead. It would work. I'd do something new, it would work, and then he would kind of figure out something else. So he was tough, but that's kind of mindset. I really wanted to, because Kit was doing really well internationally then, and it was kind of at a time when there was no one in Australia competing at that level, and also getting to the chance to medal. He won World Pro and so on, and I was like, okay, well, if I can get to Kit's level, then I could maybe do the same. So I probably just said a very long answer to something that could have been simple, but there we are. So Tom, when we were in Thailand, one of the things that did influence my approach for ADCC is the way you said the British approached the London Olympics, and how they really focused their goals on what was important. But did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. For me, this is it's one of the reasons why I say goal setting is so important, because in Atlanta 1996, the Great Britain team won 15 medals and only 1 gold, and it was considered an absolute flop, considered terrible. And at the time, they were probably thinking about bidding for the Olympics and all this other stuff, and they wanted to improve their performance. So they essentially set up a group called UK Sport, whose job it was to manage high performance sport across all different sports in the UK. And one of the things that came out of that was they took a concept from business called gap analysis, and they applied it specifically to sport. And this is the concept that they then pushed out across all sports. All sports were kind of forced to think like this if they wanted to get money, if they wanted to be funded to improve their athletes. And I can say that I would generally say this is essentially a very simple process that led to a huge improvements in performance across the whole of the British sporting system. And gap analysis is really quite simple. It has a 2-phase process. The first thing is what you call what it takes to win. So what this means is, what is it that you need to do in order to win? But not only what it takes to win now, but maybe what will it take to win in the future? So as a really good example, let's say British cycling team, they knew that to win the gold medal took a certain time in an event. But then the event, over the course of the last 5 years, the world record had been improving quite a lot, let's say. And the last world champions won the world record. So they could predict that the next world championship we won in the new world record and what it might be. So that was what it takes to win. What does it actually physically take to do what I want to achieve? And the second thing is to take a brutally honest look at where you are now. So it's, you sit there and you analyze your strengths, you analyze your weaknesses, you say, okay, what am I actually good at? What am I not good at? Where do I sit? And that is very important, because if you're not honest, you're not going to know what you need to work on. And then the next thing is to look at the difference between these two things. So identify the gap. What is the gap between the people that are going to win the best in the world now and where you are? And how are you going to close that gap? And every year, or whatever the cycle is that's appropriate, indoor, outdoor season, or no-gi, gi season, or however it's going to work, you need to go back through this loop and repeat it over time. And this is essentially the formula that they use. And it seems so obvious when you hear it. You can't believe some of this could make such a big improvement. But between 1996 and 2016, so 20 years, they went from winning 15 medals with 1 gold to winning 67 medals and 27 golds. 27 golds in sports that they weren't even any good at to start with, by applying the systematic concept. And just to give you a better idea of what it takes to win might look like, let's say in track and field, we have the men's 10,000 meters. So it's a 10K race around a track. It's 25 laps. was 27 minutes. And we know what the fastest winning time has been in the history. We know what the slowest time has been. We know what the average time has been. So we know you have to run about 27 minutes to win this race. But also we know the last lap of the 10K. If you ever watch 10K, it's basically very, very boring. You can go and sip your tea and whatever. But when you come back, the last lap of the race is where it's all won and lost. And you know that in the last lap, the fastest last lap ever has been 52.1, at least when I did these calculations before. And the slowest has been 57.4. So you know you have to be capable of running at least 53.5 for the last lap to win. What does that mean in terms of other things? Well, if you go back and look at the physiology of it, it means that if you want to run 53 seconds for the last lap, when you're fresh, this is after running 9,600 meters of other running, and you're fresh, if you can't run 52 seconds for 400 meters, and I would challenge anyone to go out there right now who doesn't do running and run 52 seconds for 400. If you can't do that, then you're never going to win. So you can just count those people out straight away. So when you're looking at who you're going to fund, what you look at, you need to look at 52-second last lap. Second thing you need to know is you need to be able to run comfortably, well, maybe not comfortably, but using aerobic energy metabolism at 21.6 to 21.8 kilometers per hour. So you have to be able to run steadily at that pace, because if you can't do that, you won't have any energy left to do the last lap in that 52 seconds. So they very specifically break this down. And also they look at other things, like they look at, for example, who tends to win. So as an example, in the 10,000 meters, the person that wins gold and silver tend to be the people that are ranked top 2 in the world going into the event. There's like something like a 70% chance those people will win. But the bronze medal, and this is interesting for someone like yourself who won a bronze medal, the bronze medal in 10,000 meters actually comes from a wider field. People who've been ranked up to 10th in the world have won the bronze medal before in the 10,000 meters on a relatively regular basis. So when you're looking at who you're going to fund, who you're going to put your money into in terms of a country, you're going to be looking at people that are ranked top 10 in the world for where you're going to put your money in terms of winning medals, etc.
Yep.
And so for you, or for anybody, maybe you think, I'm never going to beat this person, but it's not necessarily about that. It's about what can you achieve, being realistic about it and going, okay, what am I going to do and what do I need to have and where do I need to be going in before I'm ready to win. So that's an example of what it takes to win model and the gap analysis that they do.
In terms of applying that to jiu-jitsu as such, I'm more thinking in terms of like if you had to find people who are going to win, you'd have, because I feel like it's maybe more so than in other sports that skills affect. Like I feel like you sometimes see people who you think shouldn't do well, and even I think so obviously like if you took someone like Gordon Ryan, I don't know. I mean, obviously he's quite strong, but I'm not sure he would like rank highly on explosiveness or something, for example. Maybe that's not the trait that you'd look for. But yeah, it's kind of hard to find like a body type or a particular attribute that is strongly predictive of a winner in jiu-jitsu.
Well, I think like you're talking about the fact there's a multifaceted part of things, right? So there's the technical and tactical, and there's the other things that you talk about. So let's say table tennis, for example. The person that wins the Olympic gold medal in table tennis, they can be everything from like basically not a beast, but pretty big person to a very, very skinny, tall person. Like essentially body type doesn't make any difference. Whereas I think jiu-jitsu is kind of in the middle, as opposed to like track and field or basketball, where, if you want to win the high jump, you have to be a certain height tall. There's no one's won the Olympics being 1.70 meters tall, in high jump. And in basketball, there are people that are good at high level who are not tall. But in general, you're looking for taller people. So there definitely are some of those factors. But there's also factors around cognitive development and things like this that maybe you could look for. And certainly around the amount of skills that you've learned. So someone like Gordon Ryan, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but certainly they seem to have like a focus on John Danaher's like 6 systems, and they seem to be quite well developed in like triangles, arm bars, all these other things. And then they have an area that they specialize in. So I think for sure you could say like, if you want to be the best, you need to at least know how to submit someone using different skill sets, your legs, your arms, whatever it is, across a broad range of things. And then you need to focus on certain areas. So I think you can start to and analyze these factors and see what would be the most likely things that would lead to people winning. And then the other thing that I think is also, as jiu-jitsu becomes more competitive, physicality will become more important. So let's just look at MMA. It would have been similar in the old days of MMA, but then you look at someone like John Jones, and he submits his name with an Americano in a match, and like he's like almost not done any jiu-jitsu, and that's because his brothers are all in the NFL. or whatever it is that they play. And he's just a physical phenom that's also good at learning stuff. And I think over time you will see that. But probably in jiu-jitsu, it's more important to be flexible than it is to be strong. And you could probably, if we did a test, we could probably find some of these key parameters. If you had a Australian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, they had money from the government to do that, I'm sure that's one of the first things they do with the Australian Institute of Sport. Would they come up with an analysis to find out what are the key factors that would make someone successful in that area, maybe fund a PhD in it or something like that, and they would look at those factors.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to look international though, because I think that's where I think you see that in the light and featherweight, or featherweight and below, really, that there's almost no one that's not flexible. I can't think of anyone in those divisions that's close to medaling that isn't flexible, because they're getting so technical. I think at those lighter levels that those differences in flexibility actually make the difference in the match almost. So I think you could probably certainly look at that, but I think at the heavier weights, like I don't know what Bernardo Faria would score on a flexibility test, but probably not very high. But his game just seems to work around it, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And people take it to extreme levels. So, like, for example, there's many databases of performances. We've basically web scraped the entire world rankings for 20 years, and the British rankings and the Polish rankings and several other rankings, and we've created essentially normal trajectories for people as they improve over time. And we've got statistical models that show us, like, if you're doing this performance at this age, like what you're probably capable of doing as getting older, also what the probabilities are, etc., this kind of stuff. So people put a huge amount of effort into this because they're trying to save money or be efficient in how they're developing people, and so they're taking this stuff to a high level. And let's say something like soccer, they have all the pro zone data where they have how fast people run the pitch, how many meters they travel, how many change directions they do, and they use all that stuff as well at a high level. So you can get very complicated. Some of this will be outside the realms of what you can do in jiu-jitsu now, but don't think that there's not ways of which you can look at this. Interestingly, one of my friends, a girl from the UK, she's got a PhD in psychology. She did a study where she looked at the color of gi that people wore in competitions. And she found that people that wore black gis were statistically significantly more likely to win in a competition than people that wore white gis. Of course, maybe this is just fluke, but it's psychologically it's something interesting.
Yeah, I always felt cooler when I wore like a ninja when I wore a black gi. So maybe that was
that's your secret.
Yeah. And what about planning for the long term? So how do elite competitors look at their progress?
Yeah, so I thought it was good that you talked about the fact that you were planning for the next ADCC, because that's 2 years away. But typically, at least in Olympic sports, we look in Olympic quadrennials, the Olympics every 4 years. And typically you're planning for 2 Olympic cycles out. So you start 8 years beforehand, looking at the athlete and how you're going to press them through. The main reason for this is that when you go to your first Olympics, you're very unlikely to win a medal, even if you're physically extremely talented, because of many of the psychological factors about being a big competition like that. And I don't know what ADCC was like this year, but certainly for me, with the level of production, all this other stuff, could have been quite intimidating, all the people there watching, etc. And I think, having been and experienced that is very, very important. So that's why we look 2 years out. Then we look at the 5 key areas that I've talked about before that we look at, the technical and tactical, physical preparation, psychobehavioral, lifestyle, fundamental movement skills. We look at all those factors as well and how we're going to progress those over those 2 Olympic cycles. And what's interesting is in the sports that are funded, where they have like a staff of people. So just to give you an example, British Athletics had around 100 people working full time to develop track and field in the UK before the London 2012 Olympics, maybe more if you include subcontractors and stuff like this. We would probably have one person that would sit down with you as a elite level athlete every year, because at least in track and field, the way it works is most people have their own individual teams or coaches that they work with, but then they're like funded and under the management of the bigger organization. And when you're funded, you're being given money from the government to support your performance, right? So they don't want to waste taxpayers' money. So you sit down, you do a performance review, and you critically evaluate based on that like overall plan that we talked about, how you're going to improve. Just to give you an example of some of the questions, this has all changed now, but I'll give you an example on the early ones. Don't want to give away all the secrets, but they started off with like a thing where they reflected on the past season. So they'd ask, what were your goals? from a performance perspective in terms of what medals you want to win, what positions you want to finish in, and also from a process perspective, what do you want to work on in the last year. Then they ask, did you achieve them? And if you didn't achieve them, why not? Why do you think that was? Maybe it was you were injured. Maybe you can identify something around that. The second part is all about assessing your opposition and your plans. So they will say to you, and they will ask you, plus they will give you some information on this themselves. Of course, they'll ask you, what do you think are the things that lead to you wanting to win, being able to win? Essentially, it's that first question we say, what does it take to win? Because they want to make sure that you understand what it takes to win in your category, or over the sport or the event is that you're doing. And again, they ask you, how are you going to bridge the gap between where you are now and that middle zone? What's your plan going to be? Because again, they need to have a plan so they can see, if we give this person however many $1,000 a year to work towards this plan, it needs to be a decent plan. And the final thing they ask is, what do you need to be successful and how are you going to measure that? So what are the inputs and the changes you're going to make from the technical, tactical, science, medical, lifestyle thing in order to bridge that gap? And taking all of these questions into consideration, please give me an example of the plan that you're going to do for the next, probably going to be 4 years, and certainly in detail the next year, so that we know that at least you have something to work on. And when you think about that, I think that's important from jiu-jitsu, because as you said, you hadn't written down some goals. This is the whole idea of writing things down in psychology is a massive factor. So sometimes you've seen, maybe you saw at the Olympics, that people used to write certain things on the water bottles that they take out to the competition. And this is because they know that when you write something down in sports psychology, you write your goal down, it gives you a statistically better chance of actually achieving that goal. So just the fact that you're going to write down this stuff leads to a big thing. And imagine you're working on grip breaking, yeah? So if you wrote down your water bottle before you went to your thing, I'm going to break grips first, and you went into your training session, every time you took a sip of water, you'd be reminded of that, and it would remind you of what you've got to focus on and what you're going to try and work on. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Very good. Drink bottles, eh? I start the fountain and bring my own drink bottle to train.
You could put it in your thongs or flip flops or whatever you want to call them. You could do loads of different ways you could do it, but they're standard sports psychology's tactics for implementing goal setting.
I think this is as good a place as any to wrap up this episode. And to briefly summarize our discussion so far, we started off by talking about how to progress through the belts, the key idea being to develop a simple game first, perhaps 1 or 2 kind of key submissions, sweeps or guard passes, before adding more complementary layers to that game, or more concentric circles to this. We also discussed the importance of focusing on high percentage techniques and good fundamental principles, so we don't get distracted by ways of practicing jiu-jitsu that won't be effective when we start to go against better or more experienced opponents. And we also talked about several traps that you can fall into in relation to this. We then spent a significant portion of our time on talking about goal setting and identifying what you need to do to get better and close the gap between where you are now and what it takes to win or progress. So hopefully you enjoyed the discussion and now have some new ideas you can play with to improve your performance or those of your students. But for now, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so that you get notifications whenever Lachie releases new videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.